no matter what complaints you throw at Terminator 3, you have to at least give them credit. They did spell the subtitle correctly. A super advanced robot with a 56K modem, because hey, why not?
They cannot make things like that yet.
Not yet.
In 1984, The Terminator was released to theaters and proved to be the launching point of one of the most successful action stars of a generation. And sure, Arnold Schwarzenegger did do Conan the Barbarian before Terminator, but Terminator was the huge movie that opened the door to him for doing many other movies.
Terminator is like the perfect role for me. I know what I need to do in order to make the Terminator character shine.
Soon he was working with directors like John McTiernan, Paul Verhoeven, Ivan Reitman, and Terminator's James Cameron on multiple projects. With people like that behind your movies, it's hard to go wrong. Then came Terminator 2 Judgment Day, and while it was a huge success, it seemed like Schwarzenegger's heyday was now behind him. Granted, he still did movies like True Lies, which was a very uneven movie, shockingly brought up by his honest performance. And The Sixth Day, which for my money is an entertaining movie. Despite the downward trajectory of his career, the question was always out there, will there ever be a Terminator 3? But following up Terminator 2 seemed like an impossible task. It had ended the franchise so perfectly. The idea that there is no fate but what we make for ourselves, introduced in the first Terminator and fully realized in Terminator 2, as the characters take action to secure humanity's future. At the end, they ensured that a fate had been made where the Terminators would never be created. But money talks, and Terminator 3 is proof that whether or not a franchise should have a sequel, it will if the money is right. But the story wasn't the only thing going against Terminator 3. James Cameron, the man who successfully made two of the best science fiction films of all time with the first two Terminators, not to mention a huge list of other great sci-fi credits, wouldn't be returning to direct. But surely a 12-year time gap meant they could invest in a great story that would be a worthy successor to the franchise. It's not like after a dozen years they'd release a sequel that was really half-assed and poorly thought out, right? The first Terminator plays its premise extremely straight. Everything in that movie plot-wise is treated absolutely genuine.
I'll be back.
And that's kind of required with that movie. It's kind of goofy when you think about it, but the movie doesn't let you think about the plot and just forces you to get involved with the story, which is why it's so great. Terminator 2 started incorporating some jokes, but nothing that distracts from the seriousness of the situation.
Stand on one foot. Yes! Cool. El Terminator.
All the jokes were true to the characters and story, so it never felt out of place. In Terminator 3, the movie honestly has moments that make it feel like a spoof of a Terminator movie. And honestly, there is some good humor here in vein of the second Terminator, where it's true to the characters and not over the top.
Tell her who I am.
John Connor is leader of the worldwide resistance and last best hope of humankind.
But then sometimes...
Talk to the hand.
Now.
Sometimes...
Talk to the hand.
Sometimes it's a big pair of star-shaped sunglasses. Well, at least they cut out the worst joke in the movie.
Hi, I'm Chief Master Sergeant William Candy. I was honored to be selected by CRS in the ongoing effort to save American lives.
Could you imagine regularly listening to a voice that terrible? It's easily one of the worst voices ever. I think in some parts of the world, listening to that voice is a form of torture. In fact, I think it might almost be as bad as my voice.
Ooh, it's me.
I don't know about that accent.
We can fix it.
One of the key elements with the first two Terminator movies was the relationship between the Protector and the Protected. Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese fell in love. The Terminator became like a father to John Connor, and here, the Terminator is just like a Terminator to John Connor. They maybe want to avoid covering the same ground in Terminator 2, but they have to do something. The scene where John talks the Terminator out of killing him makes no sense because there's no bond between them outside of John being a mission objective for the Terminator.
What is your mission? To ensure the survival of John Connor. You are about to fail!
Instead of a bond between John and the Terminator, we instead get an alright relationship between John Connor and Kate Brewster. But maybe that's where they missed their opportunity. They could have had a relationship formed between the Terminator and Kate. She is, after all, the newbie to this situation. John's done this song and dance before. Perhaps the Terminator teaches her how to be a warrior. Perhaps she becomes interested in the future and starts to learn strategies from the Terminator. Make it be a parental relationship again, but this time, father-daughter. And when the Terminator goes after John, it's Kate that is able to talk it down. Just a thought. They didn't have to take this route at all, but they need to do something because the Terminator literally has no development in this movie. I honestly could give a crap whether or not he lives or dies here. Whereas in the second one, his death was almost certainly the saddest moment in an action movie ever. It's clear watching this film they wanted to make the TX more powerful than the T-1000. They both have a lot of the same powers, but there are some variations. It's clearly stated that the T-1000 can't form anything more than simple stabbing weapons, while the TX can do laser guns. But for some reason chooses only to use basic guns most of the time, because that makes more sense for some reason.
I like your gun.
Also, TX can take control of other robots, which the T-1000 couldn't do, but the TX doesn't do it as often as you would expect. However, it does make sense to attempt to upgrade the villain, since the Protector will be the same as before. You can't just have an identical villain, because it'll feel like a repeat, and downgrading the villain's powers won't work either, so you have to try to give the villain a serious upgrade. Problem is, I never really felt like the TX was more powerful than the T-1000 for one simple reason. TX has an endoskeleton. It is restricted to humanoid form. See how the T-1000 can just ooze through small openings? TX cannot do that. See how the T-1000 can just be in the middle of an explosion and come out taking no apparent damage? Not confident TX could do that. Only time T-1000 seems to take any damage was when he was frozen and shattered, and then melted and reformed. There is no way a robot that depends on endoskeleton would be able to recover in any way from this blow. This is a major problem, and it's not one with an easy fix. The T-1000 was such a clever idea for a robot. Cameron used the abilities of that era's computer graphics to give the T-1000 abilities that haven't been topped before or since. I would struggle to come up with a villain more powerful than the T-1000. Controlling robots is cool, but it's not used that often, and when the TX finally does use it on the T-800, I have to wonder what took it so long to try that. It could easily have taken control of the T-800 at the vet. This is a problem because the movie is Terminator 3. Terminator 2 is canon with this movie, but it doesn't feel like we're seeing something bigger and better as a sequel should be. We're seeing something lesser and smaller, exactly how a sequel shouldn't be. Alright, first we have it revealed that Sarah Connor dies from cancer not long after Judgment Day was supposed to originally happen, which doesn't sync up with the Terminator 2 deleted scenes, which shows her at a playground with John and her grandkid. But you know what? A deleted scene doesn't count because it was deleted and is therefore not canon. So I can't truly call that continuity error. But what I can call continuity error is this fight scene. First, they're fighting at the vet, and it's nighttime. And then as soon as they drive away from the vet, it's daytime. That was sudden out of nowhere. But again, I can't get too mad at the movie for this because it does provide some transition shots in an attempt to cover up this quick change from total darkness to the sun being bright in the sky. And there's a huge continuity error with this movie. And it's not even your basic continuity error where people just move their arms drastically between shots. This is a continuity error at the script level. You might wonder how that works. Well, here's how. It's revealed in this movie that John didn't send the Terminator back to protect him. This is why it can ignore his commands. Catherine Brewster sent the Terminator back to protect them.
I'm programmed to follow your commands.
Her commands.
Once this is revealed, he follows her commands, but not before. There are several points early in the movie where she is telling the Terminator to do stuff, yet he ignores those commands. He only starts to obey her commands once they reach that point in the script.
What are you doing? Let me go! Let me go! Let me go! Please, you have to let me go!
That's probably one of the biggest continuity errors ever. Alright, let's ignore that and talk about Sarah Connor's age in these movies, because the second movie makes her surprisingly young in the first movie.
29-year-old female.
Making her probably about 19 in the first movie, which makes her the oldest looking 19-year-old ever. But Terminator 3 makes her illegally young in the first movie.
They tried to murder me before I was born. When I was 13, they tried again.
Since she is clearly stated to be 29 in Terminator 2, and John is now 13 in that movie, that means Kyle Reese got rapey with Sarah Connor in the first movie. Though, in his defense, I would never have guessed she was underaged either. But then, Terminator 3 also tries to change Sarah Connor's age by making her born in 1959, and therefore not 29 in 1995 when Terminator 2 is supposed to take place. This is another example of how Terminator 3 doesn't work in the same universe as the first two movies, making me wonder if the writers bothered to do any research at all on the other movies. The internet did exist back then. It wouldn't have been too hard to make sure they had their ducks in a row here. Truly, the people behind this movie worked hard to ensure that not only does this movie fail to be accurate to the previous Terminator franchise, but also fails to be accurate to its own self-declared rules. That's great. So, they expect me to swallow that the Terminator can drive this truck so accurately that he doesn't straight up kill Kate Brewster here? The Terminator can instantly know the contours and give of a road and what the shocks of the truck can take to such a degree of precision to know for a fact that he won't kill her. Sorry, gotta call bullshit. She is so fucking dead after that.
The future has not been written. There is no fate but what we make for ourselves. I wish I could believe that.
Well, what was the theme of the first two movies? Well, maybe not a theme in the first movie, but a strong idea in the first movie and a theme in the second one. It's the world is what we make it, which is rephrased in these movies as
The future's not set. There's no fate but what we make for ourselves.
But in one single line, the whole idea introduced and followed through in those movies is tossed away.
No, you shouldn't even exist. I mean, we took out Cyberdyne over 10 years ago, but we stopped Judgment Day.
You only postponed it. Judgment Day is inevitable.
I have to ask if anyone involved with this movie bothered to watch the other two, because they essentially just rewrote the entire second movie, pretty much saying they're all just wasting their time trying to save the world. Why didn't the Terminator of that movie bring up this point? Why does he seem to think Judgment Day can be prevented?
Killing Dyson might actually prevent the war.
If destiny is a fixed thing, as this movie wants to sell me, why are they dicking around with time travel? If fate is something that cannot be changed, then surely time travel cannot change it. Pretty much, if you accept fate and destiny in this universe, as this movie desperately wants to sell you, the whole premise for the franchise falls apart.
But sometimes things happen that we just can't change.
Time travel only works if fate is a changeable thing, if our actions have a genuine impact on the world.
You mean we go run and hide somewhere in a hole while the bombs fall?
It is your destiny.
Fuck my destiny.
John.
You cannot self-terminate.
No, you can't. I can do whatever the hell I want. I'm a human being. I'm not some goddamn robot.
No, you don't have a choice. That's the whole theme of this movie. Haven't you been paying attention? They might as well sit around with their thumbs up their asses this movie, because Destiny will just do its shit anyway. I gotta wonder if these characters are sitting through the same movie I am. This is a great example of a movie that falls more and more apart the more you think about it. The more you try to impose any logic on this movie, the more it resists and the more it crumbles. It's in the subtle details, like how the T-800 pauses for dramatic effect before explaining that he's there to protect John.
John Connor. It is time.
You here to kill me?
No. You must live.
He is perfectly aware every second counts as a hostile force is quickly closing in. That's what the previous two movies got right.
Excuse me.
Fact is, if you break the Terminator and its sequel to their bare bones, they are remarkably silly movies. A robot from the future goes back in time to assassinate a person. That's about as goofy as it gets. Yet the films took themselves seriously and were executed about as perfectly as possible, especially the second one. They were creative, well acted, with great and memorable action pieces and characters. The robots had rules and time travel had rules, and the movie never broke these rules without any sort of explanation. Terminator 3 got the great action pieces right, and that's about all that made it from the first two movies into this one. This movie ignores so much from the previous two simply for expedience of script. It's easier to make a Destiny theme than, say, perhaps all they prevented in the second movie was the artificially accelerated Judgment Day brought about by the first film. That now they have to deal with the time when Judgment Day would come upon them naturally. It would have to, otherwise the entire franchise exists in a paradoxical time loop, which it kind of does still, but at least if they went this route, there is a natural origin for the time loop of the original. But shit, why be creative when you can just portray the whole franchise? Sure, it'll piss people off, but it's easier, and being creative is hard. Much easier to just slap this together and make a few bucks. I give this movie a 5 out of 10, only because it does have some great action sequences in it.
Vodka martini.
Chicken or stirred?
Do I look like I give a damn?